I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, and this is the new Kia Stonic, the first sort of really small SUV from Kia to land here on the Australian market. Now the Stonic has been out in Europe for a couple of years now. We're just getting it for 2021 here in Australia, but as we'll see in this video, it still looks and feels pretty fresh. And in fact, on the looks, which I recognize as subjective, I actually think this is quite a handsome small SUV. I think it's a better looking vehicle than the Toyota Yaris Cross. It's up there with sort of the Volkswagen T-Cross for handsome lines. I think it's pretty well executed. Now the other thing up Kia's sleeve is that the Stonic is usefully more affordable than most of its rivals. In fact, this GT line with all of the available features on it actually comes in at under 30 grand drive away, or you can get into a really base model Stonic S for just over 20 grand drive away. That being said, this vehicle is fundamentally a Kia Rio underneath the skin, and that car is even more affordable again if your ego can handle a hatchback. But if what you want is a very small SUV that's well sized for the city and competent on country roads, the Stonic shapes up pretty well on paper. And in today's video, we'll check out the interior, the practicality, and then take it for a drive. But before we do so, make sure to hit subscribe down below. Much like the Stonic is a pretty handsome vehicle outside, the crisp lines continue through to the cabin, where I think this Kia has one of the more cohesive and good looking interiors in the segment. Some of the cars in this class can be either a bit of a dog's breakfast inside or pretty drab and boring, but I think the Stonic cuts through with a well-designed and ergonomic cabin with functions exactly where you would expect them. Now, standard fit is this 8-inch touchscreen on all cars, and the resolution is actually really impressive, much crisper than the screen on our long-term Toyota Yaris Cross, for example. It's also a lot brighter, and it's bigger, and the bezels are smaller. It's a good screen. Now, on the base car, the Stonic S, that doesn't have navigation, so it does have wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. But Kia are in the middle of a fight, along with Hyundai, with one of the tech giants over wireless CarPlay or wireless Android Auto, and if their car has integrated navigation like the mid-spec Sport and this GT line, then you don't get wireless CarPlay or Android Auto. So on this car, it's wired. But I mean, that's almost a good thing because we don't have wireless charging anyway, which is almost a must-have if you're going to have wireless smartphone mirroring. Anyway, you look forward at nice smart analog gauges with a color trip computer in between with a digital speedo, audio information, navigation directions, and the like. That works well. And the steering wheel is actually a really pleasant unit. Perforated on this GT line grade, also has a flat bottom and specific badging. It looks like something out of a more expensive car. Now the seats are pretty comfortable, pretty supportive, cloth in the center and faux stitched leather on the outside in the GT line. The lesser grades have hardier materials. And most things are laid out pretty well. We've got decent sized cup holders here. We've got an armrest, which not every car in this segment has. Space ahead of the shifter. And actually, in a rare sort of statement for a Korean car, decent sized bottle holders in the doors as well. I would just point out a few oddities. The first thing is a failure to convert some functions from left-hand drive properly. As you can see, the volume dial and the temperature dial are just ahead of my outstretched hand. They should be on this side. Things like the fact that not all 4 windows have auto up down, and you only get auto wipers on the top of the range car. Those are basic things that really should have been nailed by Kia by now. But on the whole, the cabin of the Stonic is a nice place to spend time. Let's see how much space there is in the back. Kia's marketing for the Stonic really focuses on its ability to carry 4 adults, and here in the real world, that actually does pan out because you can see for myself, sitting behind my own driving position, I do have adequate space. I'm 6 foot, I've got another couple of inches of headroom, and even if you do have the sunroof, it's still preserved. Knee room is acceptable, I've got another inch or 2, and toe room is actually pretty good in the Stonic. Now, getting a 5th adult in is very ambitious, even though the hump in the floor is actually very low in this car. 4 adults will do fine. You don't need to step up to the biggest Seltos to make that work. We do get 1 extra USB port here in the back, bringing the total for the car to 2. The Volkswagen T-Cross has 4 in this segment, which is a little bit more modern, but you know, it's fine. Now, like the front, some scratchy plastics, they kind of abound in the Stonic, but at least you get a padded armrest. No center armrest, however, and no cup holders, though you can get a 600ml bottle into the doors. Here around the back of the Stonic, it is a slightly more anonymous design, though the fact you can get it in a bunch of bright colors is a really nice touch. Now, the tailgate's manual, but it's incredibly light, so I don't think that's a problem. And it opens up to reveal a good sized boot, 352 litres of space, which puts it way ahead of something like a Mazda CX-3 in this class. And then underneath the boot floor, there is a space saver spare as well to give you a little bit more confidence on country roads. Also, off to the left of the boot, we do have a bit of a storage cubby, and we have shopping bag hooks as well, which goes to show that the Stonic is really a Kia Europe sort of vehicle. So we do sort of see those practicality touches that aren't a given on some Kias that aren't destined for that market. So that's a benefit for us as well. So the Stonic is a handsome looking vehicle outside, but what's it like to drive? Well, probably unsurprisingly, this vehicle is a lot like the Rio to drive, except it has a little bit better suspension compliance because there's a tiny bit more travel allowed by the additional height in the vehicle. But in so many ways, this is a Rio with just a little bit of a lift and some cladding to make it look like an SUV. In fact, it's so much like a Rio that it's going to share that car's 4-year-old 5-star ANCAP safety rating, and it only weighs in the vicinity of 30 kilos more in GT-Line trim, so you can see just how closely related the vehicles are under the skin. That extends to the engines that are available too. The base car, which is called the Stonic S, and the mid-spec Stonic Sport share a 1.4 litre naturally aspirated petrol 4-cylinder engine with multi-point injection, producing 74 kilowatts of power and 133 newton meters of torque. Now, if you're thinking that sounds like not a lot of torque, you'd be quite right, and that engine certainly isn't going anywhere fast, nor is it particularly economical. In fact, it's rated for just under 7 litres per 100 Ks in the real world, which is a fair whack for this segment, which is another reason why I think after test driving a bunch of Stonics, people will want to go for a GT line, because this version exclusively uses the more upmarket engine, which is familiar in Europe, but seen less commonly within the Hyundai group here in Australia, and that's a 1 litre turbocharged 3-cylinder petrol producing the same 74 kilowatts of power, but 172 newton meters of torque. So it's quite a bit more torque, but also how it makes that torque is massively different. With the Atmo 1.4 litre, you need 4,000 revs on board for it to be making 133 newton meters. In the GT line with the turbo, you only need 1,500 revs on board to make 172 newton meters, so you can sense just how more effortless the turbo is to drive, and so it goes in the real world. Now with the 1.4, you can choose a 6-speed manual or a 6-speed torque converter auto, both of which work fine, whereas in the turbo, you only get a 7-speed dual clutch automatic gearbox. And to be honest, the dual clutch isn't the best. It's a bit like climbing into a 10-year-old Volkswagen with where the logic of those DSG gearboxes were a decade ago. It's not the quickest witted, sometimes it picks the wrong gear and just slurs and slushes about a bit. It's not an especially crisp dual clutch gearbox, so that's one criticism I would make of the car. Now, unlike the new Carnival, which we reviewed recently, the Stonic's ride and handling tuning for Australia was all completed before the Victorian COVID-19 lockdown in 2020. So that means this car has both a suspension tune and a steering tune that's adapted for the Australian market. And the suspension tune has been quite successful. There's a different tune for the S and the Sport compared to the GT line. Here in the GT line, it's a firmer ride, it's a little bit more focused, even though both the Sport and the GT line run on 17-inch wheels. I would say the ride is up my alley. It's not stiff, but the body roll certainly is minimized in the GT line. You feel the bumps, but they aren't allowed to sort of clamber up into the cabin and cause discomfort. You just know what's going on the road. The steering tune, on the other hand, I think probably could have been more aggressive, because the steering is definitely not as feelsome as it is in the Toyota Yaris Cross, nor as quick. In fact, you have to have like an oddly large steering input in the Stonic to get a result at the front wheels. You find yourself twirling the wheel too much in this car, whereas the Yaris Cross really points in well to a corner and just steers better and has a nicer steering rack, in my opinion. I would say refinement's quite good in the Stonic though. This 3-cylinder engine is smoother than the 3-pots that Toyota and Volkswagen sell in these sorts of cars, so that's quite well done in my opinion, and the road noise isn't as bad as it is in some rivals either. plus visibility is quite decent, and overall harshness is fairly low. It feels quite like a European car, which is another way that the Stonic is kind of pitched towards the European target market rather than, you know, the Seltos, for example, which isn't a car that's pitched to Kia in Europe. Now, in terms of safety features, the Stonic is a bit of a mixed bag. I've already mentioned the quite controversial decision to have this car share the Rio's 2017 5-star rating, which means that the Stonic's 5-star rating is quite different to that in the Toyota Yaris Cross, for example, which had to pass the much more difficult 2020 ANCAP protocol. So this car, for example, does not have junction AEB, and it does not have a center airbag, so it's not as safe as a Yaris Cross. But it does have standard forward AEB that can detect cars, pedestrians and cyclists. It does have lane keep assist with lane following, and it has driver attention assist as well. But you won't find technologies like blind spot monitoring, and you won't find reversing AEB on the Stonic at any cost, which is a bit of a disappointment. And it does trail some of the pack of small SUVs for the generosity of the safety suite. But on the whole, it's a decent car to drive. It's not the quickest in the segment, it's not the sportiest in the segment, but it certainly gets the job done. So that's a detailed first impression of the Kia Stonic. Quite a good addition, I think, to this small SUV class alongside vehicles like the Mazda CX-3, the Toyota Yaris Cross, the Volkswagen T-Cross and the Skoda Kamiq. There's now more and more options to choose from in this class, so it's really important to test drive widely and find a car that suits your needs. But I wouldn't forget to test drive the hatchbacks they're based on as well, because you can save yourself quite a lot of money by going down that route. I'm keen to know your view, so let me know down below in the comments. Would you consider the Kia Stonic? While you're there, make sure to hit subscribe and the notification bell. And as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.